Hey, what's good, everyone? Twisted here with Open Sorcery, and today I want to go ahead and talk about the Greco-Roman concept of Xenia. Now, that's what the Greeks particularly called it. When it comes to what the Romans called it, it was more so along the lines of hospitium, which is more so of a root word for our English word hospitality. So, in that sort of sense, Xenia is all about kindness to strangers. And in delving into that, I'm going to go ahead and mention that previously I've gone ahead and spoken about the fable of the lion and the mouse, which, I will provide a link in the YouTube description posting of this if you wish to go back ahead and listen to. But generally speaking, that's another short story about being kind to those that you just meet and all of that sort of thing. And, I'm going to go ahead and share some other stories from different mythologies, what have you, different adages that help to underline and underscore what Xenia is all about. So, in terms of what the term Xenia actually means, roughly translated into English, it means kindness to travelers, including foreigners. So, with that, right, going ahead and when you have guests within your home, in particular, that manner of hospitality with that root word of hospitium from the Roman and the Latin. That means going ahead and being a good host unto any guests that you may have coming into the home in particular. And, of course, it can extend to this general kindness to strangers you meet along the way. And say your travels or, just out and about on your daily, activities. But for the most part, it refers to those who are entering your home, your space, your domicile, and are looking to go ahead and, find a place of respite and comfort for whatever reason it may be. Now, when it goes to ideally why you would go ahead and showcase hospitality, go ahead and showcase this kindness, or being a gracious host unto people, it goes ahead and makes me think back to the concept or the passage of the Golden Rule, which appears by that name prominently in Christian, the New Testament, and Abrahamic sort of associated religions and all of that. But it is a general sort of principle that extends to a variety of different religions. Now, that's something I've also spoken about as a monologue in a previous entry into the Open Sorcery, which I can also provide a link for in the YouTube description as well. But when it comes unto that, the actual phrasing itself, or an abbreviated version of the Golden Rule, is do unto others as you would have done unto you. Or in another related sort of phrasing and adage that has been spoken about over time, what goes around comes around. And that sort of manner of karma coming back to you, whether positive or in a negative manner to bite you in the ass. And with that, having that sort of spirit, that sort of mentality in mind, is like, hey, look, if I do good works unto others from wanting to go ahead and be treated as such, then in having those sort of positive effects to perpetuate a positive sort of momentum and cycle and have those ripples along, then, you can go ahead and work towards those sorts of things coming back unto you in a indirect sort of manner in most cases, or in a lot of cases as well, a direct sort of fashion. But I digress. So when it comes to Xenia in of itself and learning a little more so specifically about this Greek concept, I have right here a list from an article of the core elements of Xenia. Now, honestly, for those who are well aware about going ahead and having people invited to your home and all that sort of thing, or being invited into others' houses and all of that, this is pretty much common sense, basic bitch sort of stuff. But in any case, just to go ahead and put it into a listing format and a little bit of a short breakdown. Here we go. So, the elements of Xenia. The concept of Xenia consists of specific responsibilities and obligations that both hosts and guests must uphold. The responsibilities of the host: offering food and drink to the guests, providing a comfortable place to rest, ensuring the safety and well-being of the guests during their stay. And then obligations of the guests include showing gratitude and respect to the host, not abusing the generosity of the host, offering gifts or tokens of thanks when appropriate. So, in having that sort of mentality and goodwill in being a host, or when you are a guest in someone's home, not to disrespect their place of residence and their kindness, not taking their kindness for weakness, then going ahead and having a sort of goodwill and fostering that can create for a good time, and also just being able to being able to go ahead and have good experience and allow for that positive momentum to go forward and all that sort of thing. Now, when it comes to the actual mythology of the Greeks and how Xenios is exemplified, how it's shared, how that sort of principle was taught, or at least one prominent example of it. There's a variety of them, of not only just successful manners of Xenia where it was good and the hosts that were gracious were rewarded, but also cases where there were bad hosts, there were malicious actors, or they were just not all too, conscious, or they didn't necessarily take as much pride in doing so, that there were negative consequences. And I'm just going to go ahead and share one story of a good instance of Xenia. And this comes from an article where it speaks about Zeus, who has a particular nickname of Zeus Xenios. Now, when it comes to this right here, the term Xenios, associated with the term Xenia itself, and pretty much as it states right here, apparently he is known as a god of foreigners and hospitality. But for this several paragraph excerpt, I'll go ahead and dive into it right now to share the one prominent story that involves Zeus. You have probably heard of the Greek god Zeus, but what you might not know is that he was also known as Zeus Xenios. As well as being the god of lightning and thunder, he was also the god of foreigners and hospitality. He ensured that they were looked after. There are stories of Zeus dressing up, disguised as a poor traveler, and arriving at people's homes asking for shelter. A popular story that is often used as an example of Zeus's tests is that of Bacchus and Philemon. Bacchus and Philemon were an elderly couple from the ancient region of Tyana. Being peasants, they had little money and a very modest home. Yet when Zeus came to their door disguised along with his son Hermes, they graciously offered the strangers both shelter, food, and wine. Eventually, Bacchus noticed that, despite refilling the gods' cups all night, the pitcher of wine was still full. Realizing who they were, she told her husband, who even considered slaughtering their goose. Zeus rewarded the pair for their wonderful hospitality by turning their home into a temple. Now, in listening to that, thinking about the reward that was given, turning their home into a temple, now, that may seem a little bit odd or strange, but at least from the sense of, different castes or different classes of people, going ahead and temples had a lot of fortune associated with it, a lot of riches, a lot of wealth in there, and them looking more so lavish overall. So being rewarded with such a distinguished, remodeling or distinguished building and all that sort of thing, with all those pleasantries and luxuries and so on and so forth. And not only that, but if they are a part of a temple, then they may have assistants, they may have people working under them, so on and so forth. So, pretty good reward, considering the particular culture and times. But yes, that is just one example out of many within the Greek texts and stories and mythos of, if you are a gracious host unto, say, this divine figure who's coming and being, more so disguised as a human, or just, people in general, you can get rewarded rather well, whether it's on a grandiose scale or even on a more so smaller scale. And that depending on whatever circumstances may be. But not only is it just the Greek stories in which they go ahead and have this concept of Xenia embedded into it, or the concept of kindness to strangers or travelers or foreigners that are part of it. Even when it comes to the Abrahamic side of things, right? The Abrahamic spear. There are numerous examples as well of, being gracious unto those you have as guests, or travelers, strangers, foreigners, whomever. Just having goodwill and all of that across those you meet. Right here we have at least in front of me, I have a webpage with a list of different Bible verses and all that would talk about these sorts of things. But I have just narrowed it down to 2 out of said list that is provided that I think go ahead and get the point across very well, or just are more suitable to do so for this particular covering of it. So the first one comes from the book of Leviticus, chapter 19, and these are verses 33 and 34. When a stranger sojourns with you in your land, you shall not do him wrong. You shall treat the stranger who sojourns with you as a native among you, and you shall love him as yourself. For you are strangers in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. And the second one being from the book of Hebrews, chapter 13, verses 1 and 2. Let brotherly love continue. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares. And with that, I do want to go ahead and just highlight and underscore the theme of, once again, there are angels that you are entertaining unaware, which can be taken not necessarily literally, but kind of just more so like, hey, look, that is a good person. That is a person acting as if they are an angel, a particular otherworldly being that is, more so, higher vibe, man, if you want to use that new age terminology or whatever. But the thing about it is that, as we have seen within the story of Bacchus and Philemon from the Greek mythology, that, the divine can potentially go ahead and appear as, people wanting entrance into the home, and, a testing of, how do you treat strangers, people who barely know, or acquaintances, all that, going ahead and showcasing a bit more so of your true nature. And along with that, within the actual Abrahamic and sort of mythology and the world within it, I do want to go ahead and share a story of an apocryphal text that actually speaks on, an angel going ahead and being invited into someone's home and what have you. That being the story of the book of Tobit, or Tobias as is also known, and this having to do with the Archangel Raphael. So I'll go ahead and I'll read about this little summary that I went ahead and typed up to go ahead and, help get the core idea of how it relates to Xenia and all of that, as opposed to the whole story in of itself, which, has quite a few different aspects and layers onto it. The Archangel Raphael and a man being guided by him named Tobias set off to meet people he was related to yet never interacted with before. And Raphael being disguised as a regular person, he and Tobias were openly welcomed with hospitality, and Raphael giving advice to Raguel, the homeowner, and with him abiding by his instructions, the traveling pair eventually accomplished their mission, and those in the home were able to turn around their previously unlucky fortunes brought about by an evil entity. Conversely, upon Tobias's return to his father, also named Tobias, they opened their home to Raphael, initially still presenting himself as human. The journeying pair brought a variety of treasures, and other goods associated with the completed tasks from their travels. In gratitude, both father and son named Tobias discussed what appropriate compensation would be to Raphael for assisting the younger in his works, looking to give him half of all the goods they had received. It was then that Raphael revealed he was in fact an archangel, and proceeded to advise them to give thanks and glory to God, then return to the heavenly realm. So with that, right, it's a case of, as it pertains to the book of Tobit or the book of Tobias, that you go ahead and you have Raphael coming down in human form to help the younger Tobias in his tasks, which included both of them being guests unto Raguel, the homeowner of, the relative of his that he had never met before, into their home, and going ahead and, giving advice unto that homeowner, and in doing so, and everybody who was there participating in heeding in said advice, they went ahead and changed their bad fortunes, got rid of a bad entity who is particularly named in that text, but I'm not going to state their name right now, for those who are energetically sensitive and can go ahead and get a yucky sort of feeling potentially from that. But also, in returning home to Tobias's home, where he stayed with, his core family, including his father, also named Tobias, that out of appreciation, out of gratitude, they wanted to go ahead and share that, the rewards from the other tasks unto Raphael, and just general hospitality and welcoming Raphael back and giving him his just dues, his credit. And in doing so, Raphael went ahead and revealed his actual divine nature and said, hey, look, I'm just going ahead and doing good works as instructed to me or directed to me by God or a higher form of divinity, and I'm trying to help you guys out, because something I did not cover, nor did the summary state, they went ahead and prayed very hard for assistance in times of trouble. And, with that, once Raphael went ahead and disappeared back into the heavenly realm, both Tobiases went ahead and they gave thanks and glory unto God. They sat there for multiple hours, prostrated, saying, thank you, God, doing prayers and all that sort of thing, and went about their day. And the way that they went ahead and showed gratitude for the angelic help was to spread good works and good deeds that were given unto them and all that sort of thing. Now, keeping within the Christian and the Abrahamic realm, there is another particular tale showcasing Xenia and this concept of kindness to strangers and travelers and foreigners that I think is rather popular, and I think that it warrants to go ahead and be mentioned as well to help get the point across a bit further. So this having to do with after Jesus Christ, or historically Yeshua ben Yosef, having gone ahead and died on the cross, for the sins of not only his followers, but, just humanity at large, right? And after 3 days, he is resurrected. And immediately following his resurrection, he appears to a variety of different people. One of these stories is pretty much in line with the concept of Xenia, right? So, Jesus Christ happened to go ahead and meet with some strangers on the road to a town named Emmaus. And he was gone ahead and taken in as a welcome guest and all of that once they reached said town. I will go ahead and read the Bible verses themselves to go ahead and, while not covering the whole story, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the parts that relate to Xenia itself and speak a little bit further after that. So here we go. This is from Luke chapter, I believe it's 24. Actually, I don't know, because I'm looking more so at the link in of itself, but this is from the Gospel of Luke, what have you. And I do not know exactly what chapter, but it states right here, verses 28 through 32. or whichever chapter it is. So, as they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus continued as if he were going farther. But they urged him strongly, "Stay with us, for it is nearly evening. The day is almost over." He went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. When their eyes were opened and they recognized him, he disappeared from their sight. They asked each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us?" So, once again, the general gist, they're traveling along the road to Emmaus, and in doing so, they meet with Jesus, not knowing he was Jesus, and they talk about, Old Testament stories and prophecies and all that, and he more so enlightened and educated them as to how it pertained to him in the story. But once again, talking about the figure of Jesus Christ openly, but not necessarily having him state that he was in fact Jesus. So then they get to the town of Emmaus. Jesus goes ahead and states that he's going to go ahead and keep going forward and keep walking. But they're like, nah, take some rest. Go ahead and come in. Go ahead and let us be good hosts unto you. And in doing that, he went ahead and broke the bread, gave thanks, and when they went ahead and realized who the heck he was, he just went poof and disappeared. Pretty much getting the message across that, hey, look, you know what? They went ahead and did good works. They did good deeds. They finally came to realize who he was, and that inspired them to go spread the word out that, oh, hey, look, Jesus has returned, and that's, he's not dead any further, and went to go ahead and tell the disciples, his 12 apostles, that he had returned, and thus sparking their realization of it and eventual reconnection with Christ. And before, he eventually left the earthly realm of his own volition, again with the transfiguration. But I digress. That story in of itself, tied in with the other ones that I've shared, or the other Bible verses, or the story of Bacchus and Philemon taking in Zeus, all these being adequate examples in one way or another of Xenia being kind to strangers, to travelers, to foreigners, and so on. And when it comes to that right there, right, that is when you adopt the principle of Xenia, when you go ahead and you embody that to acquaintances, to people you don't necessarily know all too well, or of course even people you know very well, that, you're going ahead and keeping that momentum going, keeping that goodwill, going ahead and paying good deeds forward. And when you have that love of strangers, when you have that love of, meeting and doing good by other people, then that is considered as another Greek term, philoxenia. So if you're familiar from the term philosophy of the love of wisdom, philoxenia is the love of strangers, philo being the prefix that means the love of. And when it comes to having a fear of strangers, conversely, right, on the opposite end of the spectrum, that is where you get xenophobia. So that's more so along the lines of fear of strangers, fear of others, those who are more so alien unto you or different in some sort of way. And those in themselves are two parts of a spectrum, right? And the reason why I go ahead and bring this up is that while there are cases where Xenia and being kind unto strangers is rather warranted, it also takes discretion and knowing when it is appropriate to go ahead and display Xenia, but also when it's appropriate to not necessarily open your home, and all that sort of thing. And to that, you may be wondering, well, what exactly do you mean by that? Now, of course, obviously, if you have a negative, intuitive feeling about somebody and, they show up at your doorstep and they're wanting inside your home and, you just feel like, this isn't a good interaction, this isn't a good person to do so with, then if you have that feeling, that gut feeling, you should say, yeah, no thank you, I can't really help you out right now, and all that sort of thing. Now, that just being more so an overall, you could say, regular, mundane sort of sense, but there is a particular paranormal phenomenon that I'm a little more so acquainted with, where going ahead and not opening your home up is definitely a very good idea. Now, that being when it comes to different stories of black-eyed children coming to the door. And I do not know exactly what culture or cultures that this particular sort of phenomenon comes from. It's just something that I recall having heard of previously, however many years ago, and I didn't really reacquaint myself with it prior to going ahead and speaking on Xenia in of itself as I am right now. Now, when it comes to having black-eyed children coming to the door, if any should ask to enter the household, simply and respectfully turn them away and say, no thank you, I'm unable to go ahead and host you right now, and all that sort of thing, and they can move on to the next person's door. Now, the reason why you do so is in having black-eyed children, which, if you aren't able to go ahead and have that sort of immediate imagination or visual for yourself, that their entire eyes or the vast majority of their pupils are just pitch black and all that sort of thing. So something unnatural unto, what we are familiar with of what the human eye looks like, right? And the reason why you go ahead and turn them away is that if they were welcome into the home or are welcomed into the home, you could very much subject yourself to, and not only yourself but your family, to bad energy and outcomes, which can include illness and death of you and your loved ones. Now, the thing about it is that, when it comes to black-eyed children in of itself, right, whether you believe such sort of beings exist, of whether you've heard particular accounts from other people, or if it's just the general nature of looking into someone's eyes, which serve as the gateway of the soul, and the gateway to the soul, and seeing that there's something dark, something malicious in there that you should not necessarily allow to enter into your home. That sort of wariness is warranted. And whether it's, black-eyed children or adults, anywhere in between, or what have you, it's going ahead and you should go ahead and have a goodwill and good nature and all of that, generally speaking, to the best of your ability, but not to the point of being foolish and or naive. It does take discernment. It does take a manner of going ahead and knowing where to draw the line and draw the boundaries for the safety and security of you and your loved ones. But generally speaking, in honestly most cases, going ahead and embodying that concept of Xenia and having the ability to be a gracious host towards foreigners, kindness towards strangers, travelers, whomever it may be. That in of itself is something that we should look to embody, look to embrace, and look to go ahead and encapsulate and personify. Now, for those, who are listening, you're likely more so spiritually inclined or magically inclined already. And whether you are already or not, I do have a recommendation in regards to helping to foster that Greco-Roman, that Greek concept of Xenia itself. And in doing so, I recommend praying to or invoking the Greek goddess of the hearth, Hestia, who governs over the home, who governs over the particular hearth space that serves central unto many Greek homes, or at least used to back in the day. And not just within Greek homes, but hearths were something that were part of many old style fashion homes. In terms of modern homes nowadays and all that, it will be more so along the lines of, say, having the central space in the living room and all that. And pretty much, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank in regards to what the particular fixture is within the home, but it is more so fireplace. There we go. Yes, the hearth is equivalent to the fireplace. Took me a moment to get the gears turning and all that, but yes, going ahead and having people around the fireplace, whether it's a faux or a fake fireplace or an actual fireplace that you could burn wood and you have a proper chimney to go ahead and allow the smoke to rise up out of the home itself. But yes, going ahead and providing that sort of openness to strangers, whether it's actually surrounding yourself by the hearth in the home, which is, the specialty of Hestia, it's a good idea very much to go ahead and do so to help you become more so acquainted with that concept and to embody it. And, even whether it's just in terms of you changing your general nature over time, or if it's a particular instance where, say, you have someone coming over, whether you know about it or it's just more so a spur of the moment thing, you can pray to Hestia, like, hey, look, make sure I'm a gracious and good host and that they are a good guest. And, as long that, to look out for us, that, this person shall not do us harm, what have you, and all this sort of thing, if they are masking potentially malicious or negative intentions. But in most cases, generally speaking, obviously you need not worry about that. But still, always a good thing to go ahead and get that extra little bit of divine push and support and all of that for your deeds and your works. At least in my opinion it is. So with that having been said in a rather long-winded way, Xenia, going ahead and showing kindness and openness to strangers, travelers, and foreigners, I think it's a very good idea to go ahead and adopt, to embody. And while there is discernment in particular cases, for the most part, going ahead and having that goodwill isn't necessarily a bad thing and won't necessarily go ahead and do harm unto you and those you care about. So with that having all been said, this is Twisted with Open Sorcery, and stay frosty, Neguses. Peace.